Absolutely.
All right. Well, hey, I wanted to thank you for taking some time with me today. And I also wanted to congratulate you on your new album, The Way of
Thank
the
you.
World. I really enjoyed it because there's quite an eclectic uh, group of songs on that album. You got rock and roll, you got some jazz, you got some blues. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much uh, to have me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you've been at this quite a while. How did you get such a mix of songs, different styles of songs to put on this album?
Well, we have to go back a little bit. I uh, I I made about 7 solo albums prior to me taking a hiatus from the world and the music world for 25 years. And then I got divorced. I remarried somebody that was totally into music.
Mm.
And she said to me, "It's time for you to put a band together." And she nagged me for 2 years. I married her and she nagged me for 2 years. And God bless her because the nagging paid off. It was she went back to college to get a degree as an adult, and she would sit at her desk, and the piano that we have in the house was butted up against her desk. She says, "Okay, I'm doing my homework. Come sit down here and write songs." And I sat down and started writing a song. And she goes, "Oh, that's a really good hook. Oh, I like that. I like that." And and she would give me a lot of encouragement. And basically it started there. And then I started doing sessions again for people. And I was over at Robbie Krieger's studio, Horse Latitudes in Glendale, California. I live in LA. Doing a session there, and he came through one day and he said, "Hey, we'd love to have you here at the studio record some of your stuff." And I said, "Well, I'd love to, but I don't have deep pockets. This is a hell of a studio, Robbie." And he said, "Well, I'll tell you what, if you pay the engineer, I'll give you the studio on days that it's free. How about that?" And I said, "Oh, that's a great deal." He says, "But there's one more caveat." I said, "What's that?" He says, "They got to let me play on the record." I said, "Okay, we got that. Yeah, we're going to do that." So I started writing songs, and within a year or two, I had 23 tracks done at his studio,
Wow.
21 originals, 2 covers. And I had almost the record finished when Nina, my wife, my late wife, was diagnosed with stage 4 terminal cancer, and that year she passed. And she made me promise to finish the record, never cancel a gig, go out on tour, live my best life, and fall in love again.
Hmm.
And um, so she passed. I honored that request. I dedicated that album, which is called Fresh Bear Tracks, because I hadn't made a record in so long.
Right.
I got signed by a label almost instantly, and COVID came along,
Right.
and we all had to, watch Netflix or do something. So I watched enough of Queen's Gambit and My Octopus Teacher, and a lot of great stuff, by the
Sure. I
way.
watched those too.
Yeah, a lot of great stuff. And then I decided, well, it's time to write another record. So I sat down and came up with this one, the one that you were talking about.
Right.
And it's eclectic because I went through so many changes sitting there during COVID,
Hmm.
and I watched a lot of stuff on a lot of documentaries. One was called the Buena Vista Social Club, which was this documentary about Cuban musicians, back in the 60s and 50s. And I kind of really dug that music because I was born in New York City, but
Mhm.
raised in the Caribbean.
Right.
So I had a lot of Latin influences. I had a lot of Creole influences. And I kind of loved that music. So And listening to the Buena Vista Social Club, I thought, you know what? I've got all these groceries here and I'm making dinner, but it's only for one. So I'm gonna kind of bring this into like this Cuban flavor. So that's where Dinner for One came from. And every song is an homage to something.
Mhm.
Uh, the Way of the World. I was listening to Bob Dylan
Hmm.
um, a lot that week. And, the times they are changing. And I went, well, look at the world the way it is. Holy crap. What would Bob do? What would Bob say? So I wrote The Way of the World.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I can go through all those titles with you and tell you how they came about. And the backstories.
Sure, absolutely. I was just wanted to know. I was going to mention that song, "The Way of the World," and I really like "A Change Will Do Me Good." Those are my two favorites so far on the record. Do you have a favorite in particular?
You know, every week it's a different favorite.
Right.
They're all my kids, and I got to treat them equally with respect. Yeah, The Way of the World definitely is one of my favorites. And A Change Would Do Me Good for sure came out of that COVID thing. Lounging in the Barker
Mhm.
5 days a week, my lows are multiplying and my groove has sprung a leak. Yeah, that was an homage to Bo Diddley to use the Bo Diddley beat.
Right.
And nobody had done a Bo Diddley kind of beat in a long time. So I thought, oh, it's time for that one. And then
Sure.
I threw in kind of like a Deep Purple kind of organ on it, and
Mhm.
yeah, those are good ones. Um, this week, I think my favorite one is probably Jewel. I like Jewel this week. I've been listening to that. And that's an homage to Leon Russell.
Okay.
And yeah, I was starting to write that. You want to hear the backstory on that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Um, so um, COVID's over. We're out and about. Um, and I go out on a date with a girl called Julie.
Hmm.
And Jewel is not about the singer Jewel. This is about the date I had with Julie. So I'm on the date, and she works for Lou Adler. Lou Adler is a big music producer in LA. I mean,
Sure.
he did for your folks that are on your call here. He did the Mamas and the Papas, all their hits. He did Carole King's Tapestry.
Right.
He did all the Cheech and Chong movies. And he sits at every Laker game on the floor, right next to the Laker bench, next to Jack Nicholson. I mean,
Right.
that's his pal, right? So I said to Julie, I said, I'm trying to make points, and so I said, hey Julie, you got a nickname? And she said, yeah, I got a nickname recently. I said, what is it? She says, well, it's called Jewel. That's my nickname, Jewel. I said, well, how did you get that? She said, well, my boss, Lou, couldn't go to some Laker games, so he had extra tickets. So he wanted me to give them to Jack Nicholson so Jack could bring somebody, sit next to him, and they could hang out. So I drove and it took me like 3 hours to get from Lou's office all the way to Jack's house. And I finally got there, and it was in time for the game. And, Jack answered the door. He says, Julie, from now on, you're a jewel to me. That's your new name, Jewel. I'm going to call you Jewel from now. I said, well, that's a hell of a way to get a name. That's pretty cool. And so I said to her, I said, you know what, Jewel, I'm going to write you a song. And she looked at me straight in the eye and she said, you wouldn't be the first.
Ooh.
Ooh.
And I thought
Wow.
you were scoring points with her.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And I said, oh my God, Hollywood strikes again. So I said, oh, okay. And I'm trying to act coy. I said, okay, who wrote your song? And she says, well, JD Souther.
Ooh.
I said, oh crap. I'm, I'm, I'm in deep. I mean, that's the guy that writes with the Eagles, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I thought about it, you know, and I kind of tried to research a little bit of his stuff, and I found a couple of songs, but they could have been kind of for anyone, and so I called her up and I said, "I tell you what," I said, "I'm going to write you a song, but you're going to know it's about you right from the first line." And she goes, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." So I came up with, "Are you a diamond or a precious gem? You got your nickname, Jewel, from your famous friend."
Ooh.
And then on the bridge, on the turnaround, it goes, "Come and take a peek, Julie," you know. So so she knows it's for her. She actually called me this week and she said, "I heard it, on the radio, and wow,
Mm.
what a song." I said, "Yeah, good song. It's a good song."
Very cool. And that's awesome. Yeah, we could talk all day about all this. I love backstories of songs. That is very cool. Um, Now, going back, talking about Fresh Bear tracks and other albums, on your previous albums, you had a lot of guests play on some songs from Billy Squire to Stephen Stills to, like you mentioned, Robbie Krieger. But this album, you decided to keep it like basically a trio and a couple different bass players. Was that basically a conscious decision to do that?
Yeah, it was a really conscious decision because, like I said, it was kind of the COVID world, and I
Mm.
would go over to Lawrence Juber's with a song in mind, um, and I'd sit down and bring my keyboard over there. I'd sit down in his home studio, and I'd start to play, and we put a little click track on it, and I play to the click track, and he'd give me a mic, and I'd sing, the lyrics in the song, basically kind of rough it out, and then he would send the Pro Tool, the Pro Tool stems to Tony Bronigal, the drummer and the co-producer of the record. Lawrence and Tony co-produced the record, and he'd send it over to Tony's house. Tony had his drums set up in his living room, and he would record them from there. He'd play to whatever I sent, and then we'd send it back to Lawrence. Lawrence would put the guitars on it, and then we'd send it off to Ricky Cortez or Hutch Hutchinson, and they would do the bass. And that's the way we did everything, with the exception of Breathe and Jewel. We did those all live together in a studio at J.J. Blair's house, in different parts of his house, but all done at the same time, and with a live, one take vocal. Um,
Nice.
so that's the way that was done, and the thought was, we kind of wanted to make it kind of sound retro, but with a modern sonic, sound. And I think we accomplished that. We did, we got what we went after. And I can't thank Lawrence Juber enough, because he really did some great work on this. And so did Tony Bronical, and JJ Blair mixed it. And JJ said, he said, "Wow, you gave me something that I don't hardly have to even fix."
Mm.
I mean, the stuff it sounds so good. So,
Right.
that's why the record sounds so good.
It is a great sounding record. Absolutely,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. Um, are there any plans to go out on the road and tour with this album?
Yeah, there are. I have been out on the road this year playing keyboards with Walter Trout,
Hmm.
and I've been playing in his band, and he features me a little bit. And some of the songs that I write end up on his records. One of the songs on this album, "The Way of the World," is called "Breathe,"
Mhm.
and Walter cut that on his Broken album, the new one that's out that went to #1. So I go out with him, and he features me, a little bit, and I get to meet a lot of people that don't even know who I am or remember me, and now they're learning about it. This weekend I was out supporting The Way of the World up in Bakersfield, and splitting a bill with Mike Zito, and
Okay.
I was up there at World Records doing that, and that was great. I'm playing in LA 2 nights, this Thursday, day after tomorrow, at the Write Off Room, and then next month I'll be at the Mint in LA on the
Okay.
23rd. of June. And yeah, I'm going to go back out with Walter, July, August. I'm going to the UK in the fall, and then I'm going to probably Germany, Italy, and around there to support this album, because a lot of people still remember me from my earlier albums before I took the hiatus.
Right.
And I had a #4 world record on my first album. It was called Sunshine Hotel,
Mm.
the song on Red Hot and Blue when I was signed to RCA. And then I'm going to go out and support this record. In fact, I just came back from Australia and New Zealand and played a gig for T-Bear over in New Zealand in Wellington. So I'm starting to, there's a lot of international interest in this record.
Yeah, absolutely. As well, you should. Yeah, get that music heard live. That would be fantastic. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. So, looking back on your career a little bit, when did you know you wanted to become a musician?
I can remember the night, the place, and the time. I was back in New York after my Caribbean upbringing,
Mhm.
and I got a job at Manny's Music on West 48th Street. And a lot of roadies would come in there, and a lot of artists would come in there and, get their gear or peruse the store. And back in the day, in that time, we're talking about, the 70s, the early 70s.
Mhm.
I was a kid, I was a teenager, and I was digging music from the get-go. I mean, music was amazing at that time. I mean, I got passes. I went down to the Fillmore East
Mm.
to see the Iron Butterfly, because I'm a keyboard player, and the Iron Butterfly had Inagata Davida, and it was like an 11-minute organ solo,
Yep.
and I was interested in hearing that. And I sat down and I watched the opening act. And it said, "Ladies and gentlemen, for their second show in the United States, please welcome from England, Led Zeppelin." You know, and I was completely blown away, you know. And not long thereafter, I think a week or so, I was back working at Manny's, and some guy came in and said, "Hey, we're going to have a jam down at the Fillmore. Maybe you guys want to come down." And he started handing out passes, and I was showing somebody a Wurlitzer, some licks on a Wurlitzer, and he says, "Kid, you play that really good. You should come down and jam with us. Here's a backstage pass. Come down." And I said, "Oh, cool." I said, "Who's us?" And he said, "The Grateful Dead."
Oh, that's all.
So it was the Grateful Dead, Traffic, and Hot Tuna.
Wow.
That was the jam that night. And it was unannounced, it was unpublished, and they just opened the door, to have a big old jam down there. That's what they did in those days.
Sure.
And Bill Graham was really smart that way.
Mm.
And so I get my first backstage pass. I'm on the corner of the stage, and I'm just standing there, and all of a sudden I get a little nudge on the shoulder, and one of the roadies goes, "Look out there." And I'm looking out at the stage, and Jerry Garcia says, "Come on, kid, come play with us." And I'm playing with the Grateful Dead. So that was the time, that was the place, that was the moment. I thought to myself, I want to do this the rest of my life.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would have a huge impact for sure. Wow. That's another great story. Um, Now, was that the first band you ever saw? Because I always ask, what was the first band that you saw live, and how did that impact you?
That was really about the first band I ever saw, like, doing what they do.
Right.
I mean, it was when I was 12, I was playing in my garage with a band. I mean, I actually have pictures of that.
Mhm.
And you know, but that Zeppelin show, that set was their first album. They played it beginning through the end.
Right.
That was the best thing I've ever seen. And to this day, nothing has topped that.
Mm. I'm jealous of that one. That is awesome.
That was
Uh,
amazing.
yeah, and then yeah, unfortunately, I've seen Robert Plant, but they stopped. I think I was 10 when Zeppelin broke up, so I never got a chance to see those guys.
I mean,
So you're
I don't know if you can see this,
sure. Yeah, up a little bit more. There you go. Okay. Yeah,
but that's me at 12 years old.
right over there.
Yeah, with my band. Yeah,
Awesome.
that's 12 years old. Um, singing the soul at 12.
Look at you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So in the 70s, I read you ended up becoming Carly Simon's road manager. How did that come about?
Yeah, well, I was playing a lot of open night mic nights at some of the clubs in New York City, Cafe Wad,
Hmm.
Dr. G's, JP's, Tracks, all those places. And all the guys that I knew that were kind of folkies, a guy called Jimmy Ryan, um, and he said, "Oh man, we're going out with Carly, and we're going to do a little bit of a tour. We're looking for a road manager or somebody that'll go with us and keep things straight." And I said,
Mhm.
I raised my hand right away. I wanted to do anything to be anywhere with any musicians.
Sure.
So that's kind of how I got the gig, and it was really good because I learned a lot.
Hmm.
I learned a lot. I learned that I didn't want to be out in the audience. I didn't want to be on the side of the stage. I wanted to be on the stage. And God bless Carly. She was married to James at the time, and they were really nice to me. I used to dog sit for them, and but I wanted a career.
How long did you do that?
I did that for one tour,
Okay.
and and I thought to myself, all I'm doing is getting her water, picking up picks off the ground, that she dropped, and I can do this as well as that other keyboard player. It may be better, and I
Sure.
want to, I want that chair. I don't
Right.
want, yeah,
On the
I don't,
stage.
yeah.
So, being from Cleveland, I have to ask if you ever remember staying at the legendary Swingos Hotel in the
Yes,
city.
I stayed at Swingos for sure.
Uh-huh.
I played the Ridgefield Coliseum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I,
Any
I
crazy
opened,
stories about Swingos?
um, I
Anything you
can't,
could,
I can't say.
right? That's what most people say.
I can't say because I don't know if the statute of limitations has run out or not.
Gotcha. Understood. Again, very notorious place.
Oh my
Absolutely.
God, was it fun?
Yeah, for sure. Then you also ended up playing on Billy Squire's first record, the first one that came out. When you were in the studio with Billy, could you tell that he was going to have a big career?
I knew he was going to have a big career when he was in a band prior to that called Piper.
Piper, that's right. Mhm.
Right. So he went out with the Babies and
Mhm.
Piper together. And here's how that all that kind of transpired. There was a guy called Sean Delaney who was one of the managers and one of the production designers for Kiss,
Mm.
and they managed Billy. And so Sean Delaney saw me playing one night at Tracks. He kind of walked back and forth in front of me, and I thought he was like one of the Village People because he had this handlebar mustache and this leather with chains and shit like that. And he was an imposing figure, and he came over to me after the show and he says, "Man, I love the way you play. You want to play and write with some of my bands?" I said, "Who are they?" He says, "Well, Billy Squire, Kiss, um, Toby Bow." He says, I want you." I said, "Okay." I'm taking gigs at that point.
Yeah.
And that's how I met Billy. And he and I got along really, really great. And he played on some of my stuff. I played on some of his stuff. Yeah. And then I ended up ghostwriting with Kiss and playing on their couple of their records, Peter Chris's and Gene Simmons and
Right.
and all
That's
that.
awesome. Yeah. How cool. Very cool. And then in the 80s, you ended up playing with Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
Yeah.
You played on the Southern Cross album. Is that
Yeah.
correct? And then did you tour with
Yeah, I
them as
did.
well?
Yeah, I was living with Stephen Stills for a little while,
Okay.
and I joined his band and went out on tour with him. Started recording with him, started writing with him. In fact, Stephen and I wrote on the Fresh Bear Tracks album.
Mhm.
We wrote a song called "Give It Up" that he plays guitar and trades licks with Walter Trout on the Fresh Bear Tracks album. "Give It Up" went to #1 in the Hit 100 in Europe during COVID. And that was one of the songs that was from 30 years ago when I
Mm.
when I was writing with him. He brought the song over to me one day. It was called Seven League Boots, and started listening to it, and it morphed into Southern Cross.
Mm.
So I did some keyboard work on that, some a little bit of arrangement back when it was being written, and I loved it. It was a great song, and it was great being a part of that album and being a part of CSNN.
Absolutely. So you did end up touring with them on that for that record, or?
No, I didn't tour with him. I just recorded with him,
Oh, okay, gotcha.
and I didn't because I had my albums to work on and tour with at that time,
Sure.
and also I was working with Cher and
Mm.
doing recording with her, writing songs for her, putting a band together for her.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now was fellow Clevelander Joe Vitale. He did a lot with CSN. Was he in the studio for that record as well?
Yeah, yeah, he was around and also played with Joe a couple of times. We did some benefits together.
Right.
Great guy,
Yeah.
great musician, really generous, warm soul. Just and a great drummer.
Yeah.
Great
Absolutely.
guy could lay the pocket down.
For sure. Yeah. Still does it too from time to time. He still plays some
Hell yeah.
shows. Yeah. Um, so you mentioned your hiatus. Why did you decide to take, that extended period of time off after were
I,
kind of hitting a stride there?
well, I remember coming from Europe to LA to produce a guy called Greg Kinn.
Sure.
He had a song, "Our Love's in Jeopardy."
Yeah.
And while I was in the studio with him, I met a woman at the Central Bar, which is now the Viper Room,
Mhm.
and she was pretty cool looking chick, and she looked like a California surfer girl, and it turns out she was from New Jersey. So um, I kind of dropped a note in her lap when I left, and she called me, and we went out on a date. And we liked each other, and one thing led to another. I'm still living in Europe, and we're kind of talking over the phone. And I come back and decide that this girl I'm really liking, and we started living together. We got a place, and we got married. And then she got pregnant, and she said, "Okay, here's the deal. No more touring for you. No more gallivanting around the world, and you need to get a day job."
Mm.
So I ended up getting a day job selling light bulbs for a light bulb company. And for the next 20 something years, sold light bulbs.
Wow.
And that's what I did. So that's how I kind of got the kibosh on the
Right.
kibosh, as it were.
Sure. Sure. But then,
I
like you
got divorced
said, yeah.
and the kibosh was over.
And the music started flowing.
Exactly.
There you go. That is perfect. Well, I am certainly glad you made this comeback. Like I said, I really enjoy. I got to go back and listen to Fresh Bear Tracks, but the new record I think is great, and I certainly hope you come to the Cleveland area, even if you're with Walter or whoever you come around with, solo or whatever. I would love to check you out live.
Oh, it'd be great. It'd be great to hang with you. Greg, I really appreciate you having me on your show. Thanks to you. Thanks to all your fans. Anybody that supports live music and
Mhm.
anybody that supports the music is especially what I try to do. One of the reasons I got signed to Cordo Valley Records was because I said to them, I said, look, I'm not a pop star. I'm not, I'm not. in my teens, and, and I'm not going to write two lines that, are going to be said 100 times and just two chords. I'm going to write you songs that really make you think. And it's kind of an oasis for your soul and your mind. And I want to, I want a niche of people that have a relationship with music.
Right.
You, Greg, have a relationship with music. Your listeners have a relationship with music. You read the liner notes. You're interested in what goes on. That's the people that I want to make music and write for.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words.
Thank you,
And
sir.
hey, I wish you nothing but success with this record. And
Thank you.
again, like I say, I hope to come out and see you live if you can anywhere in the area. I will be there.